Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian. Today we are breaking down the second of the Mythic Lotus Gaming online tournament series. We have a very interesting top 16 today with what is basically an overrepresentation of blue farm in the top 16 and then a top 16 full of some of the spiciest CEDH decks I have ever seen. It is like a pure 50-50 right now between very spicy decks, a cattail in the middle of my recording, and yeah, so half super spicy decks and then half blue farm, basically. Maybe not this half blue farm, but there are definitely a decent amount of blue farm decks in this top cut, and then once again, a lot of decks that people were definitely not expecting. So this is going to be a real interesting top 16 breakdown. Now I know what you guys are thinking. You want a completely free-to-play online game that's super sick, and much like Commander, it has some amazing potential for customizable, unlockable champions, giving that Commander style, basically having legendary permanents that describe yourself, describe your character. I know you want super sick online games, maybe, you know, some pretty cool stuff there. Maybe 80 million active players who have downloaded this game. I don't know if any of these things seem cool or attractive to any of you guys. Maybe like new content being produced like weekly, monthly, literally new stuff all the time. I don't know, all these pretty cool things seem to be pretty sweet. Of course, it'd be crazy if we had a sick sponsor for this episode. That would be insane indeed. However, I think my audience is a smart one and they want to be playing a game that combines literally television-like detail on your phone, one of the most upkept and most downloaded games of all time, and I feel like you'd probably want to know a bit about our sponsor for today's episode, Raid. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this is a pretty cool thing to happen for this channel, and I'm really excited to talk about this game. Also, the fact that they're reaching out to me at a really cool time in the history of this game. Straight up, there's so many cool things happening right now in Raid Shadow Legends, and I cannot wait to tell you all about it. First of all, we're gonna go through, because right now there are some special winter champions, and I'm gonna highlight a few of them now. Sir Nicholas of the Sacred Order. It's a powerful HP-based champion. Sir Nicholas, if you haven't got the pun already, is hilarious. It can be literally used as an unkillable team composition against certain bosses. His aura skill increases the HP of all your allies by 33%, so literally you got a tough stance on your team, which is rad. Or let's talk about one of my favorite names, Whirlim Frost King. Another Void legendary champion. It's great for early and mid game play and awesome for people who need a little bit of help in the arena. It's a great protector. His first skill is able to put veils on your champions. It attacks all his enemies with the second skill. Super sick stats on this guy, and the abilities just keep getting better and better. And then my favorite name in this entire thing is Nishak Vermin Lord. This is a strong attack champion of the Skinwasher faction, and he's got these super sick bomb debuffs that are the primary focus of his kit, which can be placed and then activated as enemies come nearby and just obliterate absolute hordes of them. And you can replace them with poison debuffs whenever they're removed or they're detonated, which is super sick. Also, in case you were wondering about the crazy updates in this game, they have the Cursed City update live right now. Holidays are here, and it has a massive present for you guys to unwrap. Cursed City is one of Raid's biggest features since the Doom Tower, with 100 stages to complete, including the stages where you'll need to take down 2 of Raid's bosses at the exact same time. It's some sick challenges for sure. As you can work your way through the Cursed City, complete various quests, and do your hands on a mythical champion, which is pretty sick too. With all this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid, if you haven't started playing yet, please go download the game now. And fun fact, in my description of this video, and it'll be a pinned comment as well, there will be a QR code to get a specific Comedian MTG link for this game, and you can get a free champion, the Epic Champion Drake from the Lizardmen faction. You can also get some other cool stuff, not as if an Epic Champion wasn't enough. You can get energy refills, skill tomes, etc., etc. So you can get a ton of sick stuff just by clicking my code to download it down in the description below, and you can find me on there. While on there, you can join my Raid clan and we can do some pretty cool stuff together. So feel free to hit me up on Raid, and thank you very much, Raid, for sponsoring this week's video. In 16th, we have Samuel Berkeley here with this chicken noodle soup list. this is the Francisco and Thrasios deck that I reported on for the last Chaos tournament. However, this one is actually playing Thassa's Oracle in it, as opposed to the memeier version that Ujin was playing last time, which I did miss until after the video. But basically the idea here is this is Sultai Thrasios goodness with, you know, just sort of a Francisco combo backup, right? So it's a lot of the same things we saw through Kai's Thrasios Miara list that he was piloting for a tournament or two at the Chaos tournament, but this is basically Sultai mid-range Thrasios stuff, right? A lot of the more explosive versions of what this archetype can provide, right? Definitely not like loaded up with too many mana dorks. We only got our 3 here. We have Devoted Druid plus Machine God's Effigy combos. We have Basalt Monolith plus Kinnan, right? So a lot of ways to generate infinite mana. And then we have Walking Ballista here, which not only acts as a payoff for all of these infinite mana combos, but it also serves as a combo when combined with Agatha's Soul Cauldron and our commander here, Francisco. So Francisco, when given a +1 counter with Ballista in the graveyard or exiled through Soul Cauldron, I should say, Francisco is able to remove a counter and hit a player and explore. And as long as there is not a land on top of your library, you can then provide infinite damage to kill your opponents. Now, the obviously risky part of this combo is if you hit like a land, or specifically 1 or 2 lands in a row on the top of your deck, you're sort of SOL. You really can't be able to take out the table if you just keep whiffing on lands on the top of your library. So Francisco having that Ballista Agatha's combo is definitely an efficient combo, but definitely one that requires a little bit of clunkiness and unfortunately can suffer from a bit of variance if things do not break your way. But as we mentioned, there's also a bunch of infinite mana combos in the deck that we talked about previously. We have our Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation stuff. We have our Seedborn Muse and our Talions to grind out a lot of card advantage, all that stuff. We got our One Ring to do the same. A surprising lack of defense grid effects I've noticed in this list. Like there's no Dosan, there's no City of Solitude, no defense grid. So, you know, really trying to push through our wins the old fashioned ways with straight up counter spells, which I find kind of interesting because we've been pushing more towards those effects as the format has gone on. I guess you could technically count Veil of Summer in that vein. So anyways, interesting top 16 list here today. Mom said, it's my turn with the Xbox, said Visual Voyager here with this Crom Tevesh list. This is very similar to the Crom Tevesh list I brought to 2 of the Chaos tournaments pretty recently. This one seems to be 1 land shorter than the list I was running, and maybe running Culling the Week. Yeah, this one's not on the Sensei's counterbalance stuff that I was running. That's on Imposter Mech in that spot as well. But for those who aren't familiar with this archetype, it's very much the mid-range variant of a lot of the Grixis stuff in the format right now. You see a lot of things like it being able to be an outlet for Hullbreaker Horror and to be able to bounce your Tevesh infinitely and draw the entirety of your deck. And then you also have Displacer Kitten, which combos very, very well with Tevesh, even though it doesn't have like a hard outlet in this deck. And then you have your Thorkel combos, you have your Breach Lines, and the rest of the classic Grixis palette here. But yeah, Crom Tevesh is a powerful deck, and it's been doing quite well in the meta lately, and I expect it to continue doing so. We have Ursky here with C-tier deck. This is Jensen Luris. This is the Hermit Druid Ad Naz hybrid that has been starting to show up more and more as of late. You know, the downside of this variant is that you have to follow Luris's restrictions. The mana value of all of your permanents has to be less than 3, so you have the inability to play, you know, staples like Rhystic Study, but what you get instead is a very efficient low to the ground 5-color Hermit Druid Turbo Naz deck, right? This is definitely a lot of that feeling of like the old Lightning Druid decks back in the day, where you're just trying to have a really efficient commander, play your spells super early in the game. Kind of surprised to not see a Mox Amber here, just because your commander comes down so early, and I guess it's like really easy to get it down super early, but I guess maybe this is more of a recognition that the deck doesn't play Jensen a lot, because there's actually no Fierce Guardianship and no Deflecting Swat as well. So maybe this archetype is more focused on the Luris part of it than being able to utilize your extremely cheap commander in the command zone, which is, I feel like, one of the big benefits to have this card as your commander, just to have that efficiency of like super cheap commander comes down as early as turn 1 and then turns on your free interaction. But I guess that's not really the focus of this variant. This variant's more focused on just getting its wins as quickly as possible and kind of just leaving the commander in the command zone, unless it's the companion cost for Luris. So well done to our player here for this top result. Parade Grounds ASAP No Rocky Culture by Twang. We have Twang here, also known as Jorman, with this Kinnan list. Now, Jorman is one of the best players in the cEDH format, as far as, I mean, not only just like points earned in tournaments, but just consistently putting up very, very good results. This is a really low on lands version of Kinnan for sure, down to 25 lands in this deck. That's very, very low to the ground. Playing a few less, I would say, like objectively spicy pieces than the last time Jorman played this deck. I like seeing Soulless Jailer in this list. Kinnan really doesn't care too much about the graveyard, and definitely not in the way that Soulless Jailer would interact with, so it's kind of cool to see that card in this deck. We have Clever Impersonator here, which is a card I've been hearing more and more folks talk about as we go through this format and as the format evolves. You know, some people are really just enjoying the ability to clone a Heuristic Study and keep it as simple as that. So been really interesting to see a lot of the format fluctuate and develop. Kinnan's definitely playing more and more clones as time goes on, which is kind of funny. But yeah, Twang here with this top 16 result with a deck that they're not explicitly known for, but definitely not your first top with this list. Now, this list is probably one of my favorite things that has come out in a really long time, not gonna lie. This is a Zelix Sanity Flayer list. And yeah, I would not fault anyone for not knowing what the hell this is. This is a 3-mana choose a background commander. It's a 2/3 and says whenever a player mills one or more creature cards, you create a 1/1 black horror creature token. So you can then pay 1 and tap it to make a player mill 3. Yeah, this card is kind of crazy. So the idea is you have it here with a black background and you create loops that basically allow you to just old-fashioned mill your opponents out. This list is called CEDH Mill Sumi. Now, I was a little bit surprised to see the Scion of Halaster background with this commander, but I guess that allows up things like the Duskmantle Guildmage combo, right? For those who don't know, Guildmage has an activated ability that says whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere this turn, players loses 1 life, which allows you to combo off with the card Mind Crank, right? It says whenever opponent loses life, the player mills as many cards. Basically, if they lose life or if they mill a card, you make the opponents mill their entire decks and then die to damage. So yeah, this is super interesting to see Mind Crank combo in a cEDH setting. This is pretty sick. And then we have Zelix here to sort of pick up some incidental value with a lot of these cards. Now I know it creates a lot of bodies with some of this casual mill stuff. It also has a quasi 1-card combo with Altar of the Brood. Basically, it says whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into their graveyard. So the idea with this variant is that when you play anything, it will then mill your opponents for 1. And as long as there is a creature in one of those graveyards, right? And this doesn't even account for multiple creatures coming in, Zelix will trigger and then mill that opponent for 1 card. And then the idea is, or mill every player for 1 card, and the abilities will stack over and over again. So as long as people aren't whiffing on creatures, and once again, if you double up on hitting creatures like 1 player and 1 player, that will then make another 1/1 and it will happen again. So it is likely, not guaranteed, but it is likely that you will end in situations where you can play Altar of the Brood and have a solid chance of just milling your opponents out with the combo of the 2 of these cards. So that's kind of a lot of the idea of this deck. It's also on Isochron Scepter Dramatic Reversal. Now your commander does not is not able to be an outlet with Summoning Sickness, but if it does not have Summoning Sickness, you can then use Isochron Scepter to generate infinite mana and then continually tap and untap Zelix to mill your opponents out the old-fashioned way with her activated ability. Her, I don't know why I sent their activated ability. Yeah. It's a pretty sick list. It's playing some cool cards like Nimble Obstructionist and new recent pickup to the format, Teferi, Mage of Zhalfir, which not a new card by any means, a very old card in fact, but seems to be picking up in play. You know, it says flash creatures that you own aren't in the battlefield have flash. All right, so flash enabler for 5 mana is not fantastic, but also says each opponent can cast spells only anytime they can cast sorcery, much like Teferi Time Raveler. So this often is an instant speed defense grid that you flash in at the end step and then have a completely protected turn, right? So this is a very real way to push through wins and try and win the game. I think this card has historically been pretty underexplored, and even I didn't really think about this card a lot. Like, it's literally a card I've read before, went, oh, it's pretty powerful, and then just never thought about it in a real context, but people are playing it. And definitely, I think, an overlooked piece of tech that is now starting to pick up on some play. But yeah, this is such a cool list. Oh yeah, not even to mention that there's Blood Chief Ascension combos in this deck as well. That being said, this deck is just like everything I really like doing in Magic. This is, I love a mill deck. I think this is so cool. I think this is such a quirky commander. The fact that we're using backgrounds is awesome. The fact that it's a infinite mill combo commander, that it can also just generate a ridiculous board state by filling the board with 1/1 horrors. Like, yeah, I mean, there's nothing I have to say about this that isn't just me geeking out about how cool it is. So really awesome job, Dr. Smash. I'm very excited to see if this commander combination can keep up. We have J1 VA with Table Police Go Burr. This is Tymnacron midrange. The more interesting part of this deck is that they're playing Sheoldred, the Apocalypse in the 99, which has been a card people were talking about originally when it first came out, but really hasn't seen much play in this blue farm Tymnacron shell a lot. Apart from that, it is a pretty standard blue farm list. We do have the Smothering Tithe here, which has been in and out of lists lately. You know, the conceit being that we have this very, very grindy format at the current moment, and yeah, the ability to hide behind some of your value engines like Rhystic and Smothering Tithe is very, very real, and people are definitely abusing that play pattern. So, you know, if people are going to hide behind Rhystic Studies, it's a really good time to play Smothering Tithe for sure. So, very good job, J1VA, and nice job on this top cut. We have Fair Joda CEDH by Pandancin' Pajamas. This is Joda the Unifier, and I'll forgive you if you don't remember the one time we've ever reported on this deck. It's a human wizard 5/5 with legendary creatures. It's a Wooburg commander for full white, blue, black, red, green. And it's legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on your bottom of your library in a random order. So, a lot of words to basically say this has legendary cascade, right? Whenever you cast a legendary spell, including these planeswalkers here, it will then cascade into a legendary creature. A legendary non-land card, actually. But only legendary creatures obviously get the power and toughness boost. So we have a lot of just very powerful legends. This is like if Sisay wanted to punch people more. You notice also in this deck that we have a Baron, and we also have a Cloudstone Curio, because technically speaking, Joda is also a Dockside outlet, right? It's also technically a Hullbreaker Core outlet, but it looks like our player here has not gone as deep in the sauce as to get an outlet in that sense. But what we have here is the ability to, once again, if we cast Dockside over and over again, we can then proceed to bounce other legends, right? And yeah, from that point, it just allows you to cascade in through your entire deck and get all the legends from your deck onto the battlefield. And then usually you probably want to something like a Thrasios. But yeah, that's pretty cool. This is definitely a wild deck with some crazy legends. It reminds me once again of like a Sisay deck, but just with less of a activate my commander a ton game plan and more of a cascade from value thing to value thing to value thing deck. I love how this deck is just not afraid to go over the top too. I mean, we've got like 7 mana Atalia. You're playing Kenrith in the 99. Like, there is so many insane selections for this deck, and to be honest, I love every second of it. This is to call this deck wild would feel like an understatement. This deck has a lot of crazy stuff going for it. You know, definitely a lot of tempo creatures here, things like Kinnan, and you know, you have Boromir to throw your opponents a little bit off tempo wise. Definitely not a ton of disruption. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Sisay is in the 99 as well, because why wouldn't there be a Sisay in the 99? I mean, we've got Tymna in the 99, Captain Sisay in the 99, Flash Urtai. Like, this deck is all over the place with the inclusions, and it's pretty sweet. I'm genuinely surprised there's not as many like Staxy pieces in this deck. Like, it's really like Drannith and Boromir, and then like Kambal and Kunoros, but like that's not a real lot of disruptive pieces for your opponents. Like a Shieldred technically counts too. Yeah, but this deck's crazy. It's also like not running counterspells at all. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those decks that you could spend time pointing out little intricacies like that over and over again, and it still wouldn't just do consuming this deck for all that it is justice. It is a wild pile of cards for sure, and definitely clearly a passion project come to life here with this deck. It is very, very cool, and congrats to our pilot here for taking it down. Got Beelzebos, Lotus 1223 by Skelt 245. This is OBnixus, the Captive Kingpin. We have our classic Rakdos ping deck here, the idea being that OBnixus is a giant value engine with cards like Disciple of the Ball, Cataract Parasite, Fire Weaver, Bowmasters, Firebrand Archer, etc., etc. Anytime you're doing 1 damage to your opponents, you are getting more and more card advantage and slowly chipping away at their life totals. You also get ad nauseum game plans. I know some lists are running like Blood Moon stuff, but it does not appear that this list is doing that. This one's a little bit more aggressively slanted, I would argue. I think it's also probably running the Walking Ballista Agatha Soul Cauldron combo because, much like Francisco, OBnixus does the same thing. Also has All Will Be One, which combos with your commander, and this one's also running Necro Lines, which is definitely the more proactive version of this deck that we were talking about. Reverberate, very spicy card here in this version of the deck. I'm used to seeing something like Fork, but I guess Reverberate's basically the same thing. Bolt Bend, some more interaction that I think we're historically used to in these OBnixus decks. But yeah, OBnix comes in many different forms. It's been doing a lot of crazy stuff in this format, and it's definitely one of the, I don't know, it's one of the more unique strategies that is able to be really consistent in the format. You know, some people were thinking this deck could be a flavor of the month kind of thing, but it's continuing to at least put up one result every couple tournaments, and you know, that's it's good for a deck that's pretty low colors and definitely a unique strategy. We have another entry of this Chicken Noodle Soup deck here. This is Temujin's variant of this list. Temujin's variant you can probably easily identify because it's not playing Thassa's Oracle. Just really going for the Francisco combos here. Has the Kinnan Basalt lines like we talked about, the Machine God's Effigy lines like we talked about. You know, I did DM Temujin between this tournament and the last one to ask them about the lack of inclusion of Thassa's Oracle, and they basically said it's a meme to not play it, and I was like, okay, sure. So that's kind of the answer I got on that department. But yeah, this is a Thrasios Sultai mid-range pile. We talked about all the combos earlier that existed in the other variant of this list, and yeah, definitely combo heavy Sultai list, very lean, very low to the ground, not very different from the one we saw earlier. Kinnan number 2 here, grind them into dust by Wounded Satellite. Wounded Satellite here, reppin' Kinnan as they normally do, rocking the same old, same old. I don't think that there's been many changes to this list, if I'm being honest. Let's see, check out the original list and see when the last time it was actually updated. Yeah, so this is the same grind them into dust list we covered about a month ago. Wounded Satellite been doing very consistently well, making a lot of top 16s lately with this deck. I think it's been a minute since he's broken out of the top 16, but still putting, oh no, actually I think he top 4 the last tournament too. So, but yeah, putting up good results with Kinnan as usual. Wounded, very competent Kinnan pilot and showing up and playing his deck very well. We have Sean Angel here, back with the C-tier Dragon Korvold list. So for those who aren't familiar, Sean went undefeated in the PNW Championship Series and also the most recent Chaos Treasure Series. So very competent Korvold pilot here, showing up tournament after tournament. Now this one is a little weird because as you can see, everybody played 6 rounds of Swiss, but when I went to see their EDH top 16 score, it said they went 3-1, which I don't understand how that was possible, seeing as it was a 5-round Swiss and then they played 1 round of the semifinals. So I'm not really sure what any of that means. But obviously still going 3 wins, 1 loss is very, very good with a deck like this one. And yeah, I really don't know what's up with that scoring. I was very curious about that. So if anyone has context on that, please throw that down in the comments below, because I'm pretty sure everyone would love to understand what that's all about. But this Korvold list is very, very standard in the sense that it is a classic Corvold turbo list, right? The idea of Corvold is to either A, make massive treasure producers, the most iconic one being Dockside Extortionist, sometimes with this Technomancer, stuff like that, to be able to make as much treasures to get you a bunch of Corvold triggers, which will allow you to set up for either dual cast or twin flame combos or ad nauseum lines and stuff like that. It's very much every sacrifice is a new card draw, and that velocity of draw allows you to really accelerate your game plan pretty effectively. And it's one of the most punishing Dockside decks in the entire format, and will definitely punish you for playing it. We have Venture Time 2.0 by Dapper Dummy. This is also an insanely spicy deck. This is Sephrus of the Hidden Ways, one of the commander decks during the D&D time in Magic the Gathering. Is whenever one or more creatures are put into your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon, and this ability triggers only once per turn. Then it says whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So basically, you want to dump things in the yard, and the more things get dumped to the yard, more triggers, more deep down in the dungeon, which provides you more and more value, and then boom, as soon as the dungeon is completed, you are reanimating stuff. So this list is insanely spicy. Like, my goodness. This is sort of, I guess, like Sephrus stacks, I would argue, but like mid-range stacks. It's quite quirky, but I mean, you can see down here in the enchantments, that says a lot, right? We have Arcane Laboratory in here. We have Stony Silence, Deafening Silence. We have Null Rod, so hate on artifacts, hate on multiple spells per turn. We have hate on activated abilities. And then a bunch of things here in the 99 that also trigger the initiative, trigger entering the dungeon, and then a bunch of really hard stacks pieces. So we have your Archons, your Aven Mind Senses, your Opposition Agent. We have a ton of stifle effects with like Nimble Obstructionist and Tishana's Tidebinder. And then once again, all, like White Plume Adventurer and Radiant Solar, like all of these dungeon triggerers, so that I assume you're just overwhelming your opponents with value. Some of the real interesting stuff here is these land cyclers from the Lord of the Rings set that allow you to go get your non-basic lands and, you know, your Troll of Cause of Doom, stuff like that, which then trigger your commander. You can do Street Wraith to trigger your commander as well. And then once again, a bunch of these initiative and initiative triggers and things like that. So this is, yeah, this is a wildly quirky deck. I'm not gonna lie, this is really freaking spicy, and definitely not what I thought I'd be seeing out of a top 5 placement at a CEDH tournament. But this deck, let's see, what did it do in the Swiss? Yeah, I went 3-1-1 in the Swiss and lost in the semifinals. So like, not bad at all. I love seeing the Mirror Shell Crab here. This is a uncounterable counterspell or a stifle, which is pretty cool. I definitely have been thinking about this card more and more as stifles have been more played in the format. But yeah, this is, I don't even know how to describe this deck apart from really freaking cool, really spicy. Oh yeah, and I guess all these cyclers and channel abilities also trigger your commander. I didn't even think about that part. Wow, huh. This list is wild. I mean, you have Rafine in the 99, you have all of these dungeon cards, which are like not the most efficient bodies, but really start to add up when you press them together with all of these efficient dungeon triggers. But yeah, this is a pretty wild list and definitely really exciting to check out for sure. While we are here, before we get into this top 4 for this Mythic Lotus 2 tournament, I just want to remind you that here at Comedian MTG, we also provide CEDH coaching. So if you want to see your name up in one of these top 16s, these top 4s, or in the championship spot at tournaments like this, feel free to check me out. I have, once again, 2 years in a row with the most wins on most diverse strategies. I also have many tournament appearances. That was also a high up for the stats for last year as well. So if you are interested in CEDH coaching in any capacity, you can feel free to hit me up at comedianmtg@gmail.com. You can find me at Twitter at comedianmtg or on Discord at comedian_mtg. Any of those places, you can find me and ask about CEDH coaching. It's been an amazing experience to make that my career this year, and I am super happy to be continuing it, and I love this format, and will continue to brew and push and innovate, and hope that some of you will come and join me. Good Soup by Freedom Waffle. Freedom Waffle, one of the most consistent players right now, playing this Blue Farm list. I don't think there's really too much to say about this deck, apart from the fact that this is 2 top 4s in a row from Freedom Waffle on this blue farm list. Doing very well with, you know, a good player playing objectively one of the best decks in the format, and we'll continue to put up good results with this. It's a very powerful strategy. This is the definitive mid-range deck of the format, having pivots between ad nauseam lines, intuition for Underworld Breach, and your Thoracle Consult stuff, as well as just some really powerful bears here and able to work with Tymna and have your consistency with Crom, card advantage, things like that. Boromir kind of being Freedom Waffle's signature piece at this point. I mean, other people are playing this card, but it's definitely very associated with Freedom. We talked about Smothering Tithe in this archetype as well earlier. Yeah, Blue Farm is a very powerful deck, and you know, a very competent player being playing a very good deck is gonna put up good results. Yeah, Ganesh Shaha with youtube.com/deckcheck MTG. Ganesh, I feel like this deck used to be called like Human Typal or something like that. But anyways, this is Tymna Crom Blue Farm. This version playing the Teferi Time Raveler as an extra silence effect on Dauntless Dismantle, as well as a super disruptive piece to other decks in the format. Ganesh, a longtime blue farm player who I believe actually that's all they play. I don't think I've ever seen them play a different deck, but someone who consistently shows up to a lot of these online tournaments and plays blue farm and does pretty well with it. Has won a tournament and made top cut on a number of others, and yeah, good blue farm pilot here, executing the deck well. We have T and K 4-color pile, I assume by Kakoft. Another competent blue farm pilot here. Starting to run out of things to say. Oh, also another Boromir player. Crazy stuff. No Dismantler in this version of this list. Yeah, there's only so much, you know, difference that can be had with 3 of the top 4 being blue farm pilots. Sorry to say. But yeah, Kakoft, also a known competent blue farm player, and showing up here, putting up a top result with this deck. Angel's Grace, 6 spice. I think that card's stock just keeps going up, in my opinion. Also no Final Fortune in this version, kind of interesting. But Angel's Grace has been overperforming for myself. I know a number of other players I've been talking to have also been really impressed by how this card's playing lately. So kind of worth noting that the stocks in this card are going up. We have Thunderdown 2 here with the Derevi. This is a list very similar to the Derevi list I piloted to the Chaos Treasure 9 series, and with some of their own innovations as well, but it's really cool. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to pick up Derevi after I played the list, but yeah, this is a very similar list than what I played. I'm actually super curious to the similarities between the two. Yeah, so it's a 4-card difference between the two decks. Adding the Angel's Grace, which I said I was going to be doing in this list anyways, and swapping out Sylvan Library, Miscast, Transmute Artifact, and Talisman of Curiosity for Angel's Grace Stunt Double, which is a card I've been really enjoying lately. Definitely a really sick flash clone, because as we mentioned, clones are going up in stock. We have Thada Adel to get our opponents 1 rings, makes a ton of sense, and it was definitely one of the main suggestions a lot of people threw at me after that tournament with this deck. And then Teferi, which we just had a whole conversation about how the stocks on this card were going up. It's a very powerful card, and I think it can do probably a good amount of work in this format. I'm really excited to start testing Teferi out in certain lists for sure. But yeah, this is this Derevi list. For those who aren't familiar with it, the idea is that it's a much more artifact-heavy, lean Derevi combo deck, right? This is a lot more mid-range Derevi than the Derevi of the past. There's very few stacks pieces, them being basically like Avon Mind Sensor as the stacks pieces, and a lot more of the finding my combos, assembling my combos, doing Deadeye lines, Emil lines, making a lot of ways to tap and untap a bunch of permanents to generate infinite mana and then draw through the majority of your deck, winning with usually like an Angel's Grace line or something like that. But you have obviously the insane potential with the One Ring, Chromatic Ori, and Shurikai being like the really big enablers of the deck. Agatha's Soul Cauldron was an amazing pickup for this deck as well. It's really cool. I really didn't expect to see this Derevi variant do so well immediately after that top placement with this deck, but yeah, no, I wasn't kidding when I said the deck really overperformed, and to see it take down the next tournament with a few updates is super sick. So congrats to Thunderdown 2 on your top performance with this deck. I think it's really cool to see this deck come out and perform once again, and in a major way, taking down this entire tournament. Yeah, really cool stuff. Congrats to Thunderdown. A really nice job. And that concludes our top 16 for today. wow, there were so many spicy decks in this top 16. Definitely some that I wasn't expecting. Obviously, I think the huge standouts are, I mean, number 1 spot going to Derevi, Sephiroth in that number 5 slot, having an insanely deep run with a deck that literally no one is talking about at all. We have this Zelix Scion of Halaster list doing really, really well, and super surprising and super freaking cool to see a deck like that show up and do well. And then a number of other spicy pieces here, like Francisco Thrasios and crazy decks like that. So, oh yeah, Joda too. A really, really cool top 16. What was your favorite deck list? Feel free to throw that down in the description below on this video. A lot of cool stuff and definitely really, really sweet archetypes showing up here today. Thank you all for watching this video. Big shout out to our sponsor for this video, Raid Shadow Legends. Thank you all for supporting this video. Remember to find my link for Raid Shadow Legends in the description of this video, as well as the pinned comment. All the information for that will be down below in the description. Quick reminder to thank our sponsor for this week's video, Raid Shadow Legends. Y'all are sick, and I'm so excited to see you guys in the queues playing this game. Once again, 80 million downloads. Such a sick game, got so much content, and specifically, you gotta check out that Sir Nicholas mission for the holiday season. Thank you again, Raid, for sponsoring this video. Thank you to Raid, and thank you to you all at home for watching this video. I'll catch you all next time.
Do you lie awake at night? Are you afraid to turn out the light?